A magnetic woman doesn't become magnetic by accident. She doesn't just fall into her power, and she doesn't rely on luck, beauty, or charm alone. What makes her different is her inner world, a world she has shaped with intention again and again. At the center of her magnetism is something far stronger than appearance or status: alignment. This alignment isn't about being perfect. It's about inner harmony, mental, emotional, and energetic. Her thoughts aren't fighting her feelings. Her desires aren't blocked by self-doubt. Her energy doesn't beg, chase, or cling. It settles, it trusts, it leads. And this inner harmony sends a steady, clear signal into the quantum field, into the structure of reality itself, calling in everything that matches her frequency. Most people don't attract what they want because they are split inside. They think one thing, feel another, and act from a completely different place. They say they want love, yet they feel unworthy. They talk about abundance, but fear not having enough. They picture success, yet live in pressure and stress. This misalignment scrambles the signal they send out, and the universe simply reflects the confusion. The queen, however, understands that to be magnetic is to be whole. She lines up her inner world with the version of herself she is becoming. She thinks like her. She feels like her. She walks, speaks, and breathes as if that version of her already exists, because in many ways it already does. She doesn't wait for the outside world to shift before she aligns the inside. She knows that cause does not follow effect. In a quantum world, she must become the cause. This is why she wakes each morning and chooses her energy. She chooses who she wants to be. She doesn't live by default, reacting to the noise of life. She lives on purpose, responding from a place that is steady, intentional, and rooted. When a woman begins to live like this, purposefully with awareness, something remarkable happens. Her presence changes. She becomes brighter. You can sense her energy before she speaks. People notice her without understanding why. They lean in, not because she is asking for attention, but because she no longer needs it. That lack of need is magnetic. That inner fullness spreads outward like a natural pull. And that pull isn't forced. It isn't a mask or a role she plays. It is simply what happens when the inside is in harmony. The queen no longer tries to become someone she already is. She doesn't run after opportunities. She attracts them. She doesn't plead for love. She becomes love. She doesn't rush to prove herself. She walks with the certainty that she is already worthy. But alignment isn't something you do once and keep forever. It's a daily practice. The magnetic woman sits in stillness, not just to calm her mind, but to tune it. She meditates not to escape life, but to become its author. She practices elevated emotions like gratitude, joy, and love, not because everything is perfect, but because she knows those feelings are the language of attraction. She chooses to feel them now so she can live them later. She observes her thoughts not to judge them, but to guide them. She becomes aware the moment her mind slips into fear, lack, or doubt. And in that awareness, she reclaims her power. Because once you are aware, you are no longer the program. You become the programmer. The queen understands this. She refuses to let the past hypnotize her. She wakes up from old stories and reshapes them as they rise. Here's the truth. Alignment feels like freedom. It feels like peace. It feels like knowing that everything you desire isn't outside of you at all, but already within you, waiting to be awakened. The queen doesn't become magnetic by doing more. She becomes magnetic by becoming more of her true self. Beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, she removes everything that no longer matches the woman she is becoming. And what remains is radiant, powerful, undeniable. In a world that constantly pulls you toward distraction, comparison, and noise, the aligned woman becomes a rare and powerful force. She doesn't shout to be seen. She doesn't fight to be chosen. She doesn't make herself smaller to be accepted. Her presence speaks louder than her words. Her frequency arrives before she does. Her alignment is her introduction. One of the most meaningful shifts a woman experiences on her journey to becoming magnetic is breaking her addiction to external validation. It's not a simple change. It takes undoing years, often decades, of programming that taught her to look outside herself for approval, affection, and identity. That validation once felt like air. A compliment could lift her for a moment. A glance, a message, a reaction, each one gave her a quick high. But like any addiction, the emptiness returned as soon as it faded. It made her dependent. It made her forget who she was before the world tried to define her. The magnetic woman stops feeding on attention. She knows external validation is a fake currency. It shines. It feels good briefly. But it doesn't last. It keeps you chasing, proving, performing. It traps you in the cycle of needing to be chosen. But the queen doesn't perform. She doesn't ask to be seen. She doesn't shift to be accepted. She breaks that cycle because she knows something essential. Anything you chase outside yourself becomes your master. So she turns inward, not to hide, but to free herself. She starts noticing the ways she used to hand over her power. How her mood once depended on someone else's reaction. How she dressed, spoke, or behaved to win approval from people who didn't even understand her. How she dimmed her brilliance to be easier for others. How she searched for love before learning to give it to herself. And with that honesty, she starts to detach. She stops pretending. She releases the need to be anything but her true self. This doesn't make her cold. It makes her connected to her soul. She builds a relationship with herself. She speaks to herself with kindness. She listens to her inner voice. She respects her boundaries. She learns to sit with her own presence without reaching for distraction or validation. And this relationship becomes the root of her power. Science tells us the brain becomes addicted to patterns, not just emotionally, but chemically. The praise, the message, the approval, it triggers dopamine. And when it fades, the mind wants another hit. But the queen refuses to let her biology decide her fate. She breaks the loop. She teaches her body what it feels like to be whole without needing to be noticed. She stops chasing the outside to build inner worth. She builds that worth herself steady, patient, intentional. When she meditates, she is not simply closing her eyes. She is rewiring her nervous system. She is disconnecting from the identity built on needing approval and reconnecting with the truth of who she is. She repeats new beliefs, not because they're trendy affirmations, but because repetition literally reshapes the brain. She pictures herself moving through life without asking for permission to be powerful. She imagines choosing peace over people pleasing. She feels what it's like to live free from the need for applause, to feel alive from within. This inner work slowly begins to show on the outside. She becomes less reactive, less frantic, less overwhelmed. Her energy settles. She no longer rushes to reply to every opinion that crosses her path. She no longer fears being rejected because her worth is no longer tied to someone else's approval. She becomes thoughtful about where she puts her energy. Not everyone gets access. Not every comment sinks in. She has boundaries instead of barriers, standards instead of pride. And people can feel that shift. Something else happens when she stops searching outside herself for validation. She starts attracting people and situations that match the peace she feels inside. The healthier she grows within, the healthier her connections become around her. The more she listens to her own voice, the more the right opportunities flow to her because she no longer vibrates from lack. She vibrates from fullness. That change in frequency is what makes her magnetic. She no longer waits to be chosen. She chooses herself. She no longer looks for proof that she is enough. She lives as if she already is. She doesn't need someone to tell her she's beautiful in order to feel beautiful. She doesn't need to be liked to like herself. Her energy no longer whispers, "Please approve of me." It simply says, "I know who I am," and that kind of knowing becomes a quiet confidence that can move mountains without ever raising its voice. As she keeps letting go of her old need for external approval, she becomes lighter, freer, and more powerful. She gathers back the parts of herself that were once scattered by the opinions of others. She stops asking the world, "Am I enough yet?" and instead asks herself, "What would it feel like to live like I already am?" That question becomes her guide. That inner shift becomes her turning point. The change from ordinary to magnetic begins with one bold decision to stop living from the memory of the past and start living from the vision of the future. Most people repeat yesterday on loop. They wake up, feel the same emotions, think the same thoughts, make the same choices, and end up with the same results. Their personality stays stuck, and their reality mirrors it. But the woman who rises into her power knows she has to break that cycle. She has to choose to live not from who she once was, but from who she is becoming. When she wakes up, she doesn't jump straight into the old patterns or the old pain. She knows the brain is a record of the past, wired by old experiences, shaped by old beliefs. And if she keeps operating from that record, she will only create more of what she has already lived. So she interrupts the pattern. She uses her imagination not to replay wounds, but to create a future. She rehearses a new version of herself in her mind. A woman who is free, powerful, bright, and whole. She sees her. She feels her. And she believes in her long before there is any physical proof that she exists. This is not about pretending or avoiding the truth. She has faced her pain. She has sat with the darkness, let the tears fall, acknowledged the heartbreak. But she no longer lets those moments become her identity. She no longer allows the past to decide who she is. The wounds may be real, but they are not her definition. Her identity becomes a conscious creation, built moment by moment, choice by choice, aligned with the vision she holds in her mind and in her heart. Living from the future means she must learn to feel at home in the unknown. That is the key. Most people live in emotional survival, replaying old hurts like rejection, betrayal, or failure. These emotional habits keep them locked to what was. The magnetic woman understands that to step into a new reality, she has to practice feeling emotions she hasn't yet earned with her senses. She must feel gratitude for a life that hasn't appeared yet. She must feel love before the relationship arrives. She must feel success before the evidence shows up. She must trust the unseen more than the seen. This isn't fantasy. It's both neurological and energetic. When she feels her future as if it's already real, her body starts believing it. Her brain fires in new ways. Her heart finds harmony. Her whole field shifts. And that shift is what draws her future toward her. It's not about forcing things or controlling timing. It's about becoming the version of herself who already lives in the reality she wants. She begins to notice when her old self tries to return, the self that hesitates, doubts, remembers the pain, and prepares for more. And in those moments, she chooses differently. She breaks the loop. She speaks to herself as the woman she is becoming, not the girl who was hurt. She forgives herself. She breathes through the fear. She returns to the vision because she knows that every time she responds from her future self, she strengthens that identity, makes it more familiar, more true. She enters rooms differently. She speaks from a steady place. She no longer tries to be understood. She understands herself. She no longer waits for someone to allow her to shine. She grants herself that permission. She lives aligned with a higher version of herself. Not because it's simple, but because it matters. Because the price of living from the past is too high. It keeps her small, reactive, and powerless. And she didn't come here to play small. In her daily practices, she connects with her future. In meditation, she steps into her new identity. She asks herself, How would she think? How would she feel? How would she walk through the world? And then she becomes her? Not later, not when life looks perfect, but right now, in this moment, again and again. Because she knows reality responds to identity. The world does not react to who you used to be. It reacts to who you are being. Every time she thinks beyond the past, she trims away the old self. Every time she feels love without needing evidence, she teaches her body a new mind. Every time she acts as if her dream is already unfolding, she becomes magnetic to it. The gap between who she was and who she is becoming shrinks until one day there is no gap at all. There's only embodiment. There is only the woman who no longer lives from wounds, but from wisdom. There is only the queen. The magnetic woman understands something most people miss. Energy speaks before words ever do. Long before she walks into a room or opens her mouth, her frequency arrives first. People respond to her not because of her looks or achievements, but because of how she makes them feel without trying. Her presence carries a quiet message. Confidence without ego, power without force, grace without shrinking. She doesn't demand attention. She draws it naturally. In a world obsessed with saying the right things, doing the right things, appearing a certain way, the magnetic woman communicates in an older and deeper language. Energy. She knows every emotion has a frequency, and the world responds to that frequency before anything else. If she feels needy, insecure, desperate, or resentful, she will pull in experiences that echo those states. If she feels whole, bright, calm, and sure, she becomes a lighthouse for people and opportunities that match that same level. The woman who understands this doesn't try to control her surroundings with words or tactics. She doesn't push to be heard or twist things to go her way. She doesn't chase relationship success or praise. Instead, she focuses on her inner world. She becomes intentional about the energy she sends out because she knows life is always giving her feedback. The people she meets, the situations she enters, even the challenges she faces, they all reflect her state of being. When she feels out of alignment, she doesn't blame the outside world. She looks inward to adjust. She asks what she is believing, what she is feeling, what signal she is sending. She knows everything is energy, her thoughts, her emotions, her expectations. So instead of trying to manage the world, she tunes herself. She becomes the frequency she wants to attract. She replaces striving with embodiment. If she wants love, she vibrates love. If she wants success, she steps into the energy of success. She doesn't just picture what she wants. She feels it in her body until it becomes her natural state. And from that place, she moves through life, not chasing, not grasping, simply attracting. This isn't passive, it is deeply active. It takes discipline to watch your inner world. It takes awareness to notice when your energy dips and to gently bring yourself back to center. It takes courage to stop reacting and start responding as the woman you're choosing to become. But that discipline turns into her superpower. She trains her nervous system to live in higher emotions, not once in a while, but again and again. She knows energy isn't some vague idea. It is alive. It breathes. It's the silent conversation she is having with the world. When she steps into a room, people can feel her. When she speaks, her words land with weight. Not because she is louder or trying harder, but because her energy is clear, steady, and true. She is not scattered. She is not pretending. She is not putting on a show. She is aligned. This alignment creates a kind of resonance. People are naturally drawn to her because her presence makes them feel calm, inspired, or simply more awake. They might not understand why they're pulled toward her, but they are, because energy doesn't lie. Energy doesn't need to convince anyone. It doesn't argue. It simply attracts or it doesn't. And when it's real and elevated, it becomes magnetic. She also knows that attraction is not only about pulling things in. It's about moving with life instead of against it. She releases the need to force outcomes because she trusts her frequency to guide the way. She trusts the timing, the unfolding, the path itself. She doesn't live in scarcity, worrying she'll miss her moment. She lives in abundance, knowing that what is meant for her cannot pass her by when she becomes the version of herself who is open to receive it. Most people never see her work. They don't see the early mornings, the meditation, the journaling, the quiet inner shifts. They don't see her choosing trust over fear in private moments. They don't hear her inner voice being rewritten line by line. They only feel the outcome. They feel the power of a woman who no longer bargains with self-doubt. A woman who refuses to shrink to make others comfortable. A woman who doesn't ask for approval to shine. She has learned the language of energy. She doesn't chase anymore because she no longer feels empty. She doesn't beg for understanding because she no longer questions her own truth. She doesn't perform because she no longer needs to be chosen. Her energy becomes her statement. Her alignment becomes her pull. Her frequency becomes her invitation. The final shift into becoming truly magnetic is not a thought. It's a feeling in the body. It isn't about repeating affirmations or understanding worthiness in theory. It is about holding worthiness so deeply that every cell in her body vibrates with the truth that she is enough. Not because of achievements, relationships, or how others see her, but because she exists. This kind of worthiness can't be faked. It has to be felt. It has to be lived. For most of her life, the woman who is now becoming magnetic may have tried to earn her worth. She worked endlessly, overgave, made herself smaller to fit in, or exaggerated to be noticed. She may have stayed in places or relationships that didn't honor her because somewhere inside she believed that was all she deserved. She wore masks. She became who others needed. She collected accomplishments and praise like armor, trying to protect a shaky sense of self underneath. But worthiness isn't something you gather, it's something you claim. And claiming it demands a bold, honest look at every belief that once told her she wasn't enough. The magnetic woman sits with herself and listens beyond her surface thoughts. She hears the signals in her nervous system, the echoes of old wounds, the memory of being overlooked, the voices that once said she was too much or not enough. She doesn't skip past this pain. She meets it, because to embody worthiness, she must free the parts of herself that still feel unworthy. This is healing, yes, but it's also rewiring. The mind and body are connected. Every thought sparks a chemical reaction. Over time, the emotions she repeats, shame, guilt, fear, lack, settle into the body. They become familiar. The body gets attached to these states, even when they no longer serve her. So if she wants to change, she must create a new emotional home. She must teach her body what worthiness feels like, not once, but as her natural state. This begins in stillness. In meditation, she doesn't escape her life. She enters a place where she can reach the subconscious and reshape it. She breathes into her heart. She connects with the present moment because real change only happens there. She calls up the emotions that match her worth. Gratitude, love, power, joy, and lets them wash through her. She lets them become her inner chemistry. She stays with them long enough for her body to see them as normal. And slowly, this becomes who she is. She stops over-explaining. She no longer needs to prove herself. She doesn't overcompensate. She refuses crumbs because she knows she is the whole feast. Her standards are not arrogance. They are embodiment. She doesn't hope she's worthy. She walks like she knows it. And because energy doesn't lie, people begin to reflect that truth back to her. There is a softness in her now because she no longer pushes so hard. There is a strength in her because she no longer needs to guard or justify her value. She stops trying to earn love because she realizes she is love. She becomes rooted in her own being. Her worth no longer depends on productivity or perfection or how much she gives. It lives in the way she honors herself. This inner shift changes everything. She begins to attract relationships where she is valued not for what she offers, but for who she is. She walks away from anything that doesn't match her frequency. She sets boundaries without guilt because she knows that saying no is an act of self-respect. She stops comparing herself because her worth is not up for debate. She watches another woman shine and celebrates her because someone else's brilliance no longer threatens her own. The magnetic woman doesn't just think she is worthy. She feels it, expresses it, lives it. And that feeling speaks louder than any words. It shapes how she walks, how she breathes, how she fills a space. Her presence says, I know who I am, and that knowing is magnetic because the world doesn't respond to what she wants. It responds to who she is being. And when she is being a woman who knows she is enough, the world can't help but respond. She becomes a mirror that helps others remember their own worth. She becomes a frequency that uplifts, expands, and attracts only what matches her truth. The path from woman to queen isn't built on achievements or outside praise. It is an inner revolution. A magnetic woman is not born. She is formed through honest self-awareness, emotional mastery, and radical self-worth. She doesn't react to life. She shapes it. She doesn't chase love, success, or recognition. She aligns with them because she understands a deeper law. Energy comes before matter. Identity shapes destiny. Worthiness is not earned. It is embodied. She has trained her nervous system to trust what she cannot yet see, to feel elevated emotions ahead of time, and to speak the language of vibration. Her power isn't in how loudly she demands, but in how softly she radiates. Her strength is not in controlling, but in allowing. Her magnetism is not effort, it is essence. She has released the woman who lived from fear and stepped into the self who leads with vision. And by doing that, she doesn't just attract a new life, she becomes a new life. This is the art of becoming magnetic, not by force, but by frequency. Not by pretending, but by presence. Not someday, but now. The queen doesn't wait to be chosen. She chooses herself. And in that moment, she unlocks the truest thing of all. She was always the one.